forsaken the people. Why God had forsaken the people. And then towards the end, we had this sense that most Psalms reach a sense of reconciliation, or at least hope, but that the uncertainty continued towards the end of 44. And we mentioned that that had a kind of Euripidean quality to it, where the uncertainty represented the fact that they were still in the present hardship. However,
even though, and the Euripidean thing we were talking about was how Euripides looks back at the Odyssey and says, you know, we don't want pumps like this anymore. They're not of the world. And we were just looking at the first verse when it says, or the second verse when it says, you know, we tell stories and we remember the olden days. Mikede, right? Sorry, Ed, go ahead. Yeah.
No, completely. And but we qualified that, saying that there's obviously an essential difference between pagan Euripidean drama and Jewish liturgy, which is the presence of the one God. However, to continue the allegory, this is the moment that we go straight back to the end of the Oresteia, where the glory of Athens is complete. The moment of law and justice that will go on forever as the
right. For Michael, you'll have to read the Oresteia as well, but that's a series of 3 plays of bloodshed, murder, the history of the house of Atreus, and all of the crazy things that happen. But by the end, in the Eumenides, the last play, the city of Athens a justice system is founded within the play. And it's just this moment of celebration of kind of harmony between the gods and the human world. I don't think there's any other work in the Greek tradition that does it. I mean, obviously that's what you're talking about now. Yeah, so go ahead, Ed, yeah.
So having brought up the pagan tradition and the English coronation of George II earlier, let's go back to what's actually happening here. It seems to me a psalm that stands completely aloof from everything we've read so far. And it seems to be not only a break from 44, a complete break from 44, but a break from actually everything we've read, either those that seem authored by David, which are full of personal struggle, conscience, and the search for redemption, or the psalms from the sons of Korach, which seem to be more rooted in the land and the redemption of the people.
Well, this is also the sons of Korach, but okay, right?
It is. But this is the sons of Korach singing the moment of Solomon's marriage and his.
How do we know? I'm going to be really dumb here. How do we know it's Solomon?
Right. So this is the thing. All of the other psalms to me have been very loose. They haven't been. It's very hard to situate on purposefully. They are to do much more with spiritual concerns. Why do I think this is to do with Solomon? First of all, it's the Shir Yedidot at the beginning, and an alternative name for Solomon is Yedidiah.
Okay.
The second thing is it's a specific commentary on a king emerging from his palace to become married to a foreign queen. Solomon famously had 300 wives, I think, and 800 concubines. So, and he married Moabites, Ammonites, the daughter of the Pharaoh. There was also obviously the Queen of Sheba, that myth. That's mentioned here, and I'll go back to
what is that about?
Well, I think actually it's to do with justifying the Davidic line. So I think a lot of this is to do with Solomon being the second son of Bathsheba, but that he's got legitimacy despite that, and also.
Well, but no, it's also despite his mother, who's an Ammonite, right? That's right. The other issue, right?
And also the Davidic line from Ruth.
Right. So what? But why? I mean, aside from the answer, well, that's just the way it was. Why is Solomon involved with so many women?
It's a great question, and I think it's to do with this very earthly sense of glory, and I think that's why this places a moment of regal earthly glory, which makes it so different from the other psalms, which is so much more to do with a struggle with conscience and justice and equality and fairness. Here is an almost pagan style king coming out of the glory of his marriage as the great king. However, of course, it's not that, and we'll see why it's not that. And we'll see why it's still consistent with the Psalms. The other reason why I think it's definitely Solomon is in the 9th verse, there's a reference to gold from Ophir. And in Sefer Melachim, in 1 Kings 10, it says that Solomon receives gold from Ophir every 3 years.
There you go. Okay.
And also on top of that, a nice little, for anyone who lives in Tel Aviv, in the grounds of Museum Eretz Israel, there is a coin, or no, a shard that from the 8th century BC that says in Proto-Hebrew, gold of Ophir to Bet Horon, 30 shekel. So that we've actually got stuff here from the moment where Solomon was probably being around that time.
That's a pretty amazing archaeological find, huh?
Right. So I really want, and because of that shard and the fact that I live, 500 meters from there, I want to really place this psalm as a kind of opposite of all the psalms we've read so far, but therefore as a key to understanding the difference, what the others are doing. And what the others are doing, I think, are really leading to this moment. Go on, sorry, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that we have a transition to Solomon here, because prior to that we have, David is talking about his sin a lot, right? Or how he. Okay. So don't we have here a reflection of the story of the sin with Bathsheba in a way?
In terms of, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think it's resolved. I mean, I think this is the earthly resolution of that anxiety. So all of the anxieties David has shown are shown here. This is the future. We're getting a picture here of redemption.
Yeah, I'm saying that because, in the story with Bathsheba, we are starting with David's sin, and then we have Solomon, who is born toward the end.
Right. He's born out of, right. So, the whole thing is tainted, right? It's all tainted, right?
But the biblical argument is that Solomon's actually the second son, so he's not directly in line. But by the time Solomon comes along, God makes his peace with David for what happened with Bathsheba because he's the second son. And apparently that leads to the name Shlomo. And Shlomo
Doeg is the first son?
So there is a first son. Shlomo is the second son. And his name represents the fact that God makes peace with David's second son after the adultery of Bathsheba.
Interesting. So this is a point of reconciliation with David.
Right, and he's also not first in line to the throne, technically.
I don't think it's reconciliation. It's kind of, well, we'll have to, I'm not, it's not, go ahead, Ed, sorry. I think we have to hold off on naming it. Go ahead.
It's tough to name because, as we will see, although it's very much to do with earthly glory, it's very much to do with almost crowning God at the same time. So exactly whether it's redemption, reconciliation, salvation, all of these words kind of swim around. And I think...
Right. Take us through the second line, yeah?
So the Chash Libi?
Yeah.
So I think obviously Lev, we've seen...
let's just read it. Chash Libi davar tov. Omer ani ma'asi lamelech, l'shonei et sofer mahir. Wow, so we were talking about Psalms that are writerly. This is obviously one of them. Go ahead, Ed.
It is rightly, but I think there's a contradistinction here between the singing and the writing. And I think that singing is clearly a matter of joy, whereas writing seems to be a matter of more anxiety. And I think that that's why the pen of a, and they often translate it as an expert, but mahir, it's like the joy trips off the tongue. It's not, it's quick. It doesn't have the deep sense of anxiety that the writer of the psalm.
I'm trying to read that inside. Lishoni et sofer mahir. My mouth,
my tongue,
tongue is like a pen
of a quick writer.
I mean, it is still though the metaphor for the spoken is the written.
It is, but I think the mahir is very important. That it's joyful writing, and therefore it's quick. It comes to him very quickly. It doesn't have anxiety. He's about to announce something that's joyful, and I think that hangs on Mehir, which is also very strangely variously translated all over the place. I mean, so
we get very different translations here. Quick, prompt, skilled, which seem to be contradictions, right?
Right, but I think obviously it's probably inherent in the Hebrew, but the fact that people choose so many different translations in the tradition, I think, suggests that it's an important word at least, and one to think about in the verse. That how that word functions properly. Yeah, I would suggest it's quick. It's a sense that the joy is tripping off his tongue.
Well, quick is the literal translation of Mahir, but figuratively, you can also say that because he's quick, he's skilled. So you can also read it like that.
Let's go back to the first part, Rachash Libi. I mean, that also is Rachash. What does that mean?
Oh, made a noise. Or
no,
it's like stirring. It's like
right. I mean, I think there's that sense of right, and this is we haven't really seen this before. Rachash Libi. I mean, my heart overflows is just, it's the wrong metaphor, right? I mean, right. They're avoiding the more literal metaphor of being stirred or vibrating.
That vibrating, that vibrating sets up this sense of joy. Something's coming, and then it hits, and then it hits, and then it hits you. Davar tov.
Why is it anima asai lamelech? And that's variously translated, right? I mean, here they're going for the figurative. Right, of
verse, yeah,
right, which is not lav dafka, right, but we get why, right? It's the thing. I mean, that's how I think the Radak actually says that this is the thing that writers make, right?
But Masai, I mean, a more literal translation would be my deeds,
right, right. But what's licensing that translation is what comes afterwards, the second part of the verse.
Yeah, but right? I think one of the keys here is something that's not very typical of the Psalms is this moment of Devar Tov. It's a very concise, factual moment. My heart stirs, and it's something good.
Right, it's very particular. We haven't had that before. We've had more abstract. We've had expectation or experience of like some kind of either continuous joy or continuous trauma. And here you're saying Devar Tov is specific.
It's specific, and we're in it, and we're about to look at it. And the whole psalm is really, what is the Devar Tov? And from there, you could say that the Devar Tov of this psalm is what all the other psalms we're looking forward to, that we've been looking at so far. So all of the spiritual psalms, all of the angst-ridden psalms lead to this very simple moment, this vision of Devar Tov, which is Solomon.
I'm with you for the moment.
Okay.
I'm sure we'll have more evidence, which is going to tell us more about that. I mean, should we continue now, or you want to talk more about that?
Can I say something about Lemelech? I mean, Lemelech is interesting here because I think it can also mean God.
Yeah. I mean, it does seem that we're in the middle of this physical realm.
There's a very I think Michael is right, because it becomes later. Not only is it he's called God, but also your God, but also the wife is referred to as looking to Solomon as essentially her God, and Solomon has his God. And so this concept of Melech is variously interrelated between the characters.
Excellent. Next line. You know what? I just want to read it a little. I want to read the verse before you do, and Ed,
fantastic.
Your reading is very strong, and I want to just feel a little bit. Okay.
Absolutely.
Yafifit mi bnei adam chutza chen. So thou art fairer than the children of men, bisvotecha al kein brachacha Elohim leolam. Chutzak chen, what does that mean? Chutzak?
Chutzak chen, like grace is being poured or placed on your lips.
Beautiful, right? And for that reason, you're blessed, because your lips have been graced. For that reason, you're blessed. Go ahead, Ed. Yeah.
So this is incredibly, to me, central description of a king. of an elect, to do with beauty and grace and blessing. We'll see how it contrasts with the next verse, but for the moment, I think the incredibly central quality of the whole psalm.
It's almost like Shira Shirim in a way, right?
Mm-hmm. And also the allusion to lips, is maybe connected to speech.
That's for sure. That's for sure. I mean, I keep on moving in that direction. I just want to keep that interpretation in play.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure it has something to do with yours as well, that here the person who speaks well, who is graced with good speech, that person is blessed forever. That there's some sense in which the person who speaks, the singer, right? I keep on thinking of this, Ed, in terms of like the patronage of Ben Jonson to the king, right? And he's doing his job here, and really, and it's parallel to what's being spoken about on a kind of divine level here.
Right, or Virgil to Augustus or something. There's also the elevation of Solomon above the people, that he's fairer than the children of men, that there's something almost, and this is something that is obviously blasphemous, but there's something almost divine about
I know, I hear that, I get
his beauty.
And I think that's part of your argument, that we really have to glorify this guy now, because it's got to take care of all the anxiety and doubt that came before it.
Indeed, this is the moment of elevation. This is the moment of sanctimony. This is what we've been waiting for. This is everything that David has gone through is for this.
Go ahead.
So now we move from the central to the, and I think maybe you want to read it again and then.
Okay, Chagor Charbcha al Yarach. It's a hard one to say, right? Gibor Hotecha b'Hadrecha. Gird thy sword upon thy thigh, O mighty warrior, mighty king, great one, O Hodecha v'Hadar. Thy glory and thy
Hadarecha, yeah.
Hadarecha, sorry.
So I think this is clearly more of a warrior king than the speaker and the beauty.
Why do we need a warrior king now?
Well, we've moved from the poet to the warrior. So the two roles of kingship in Judaism are to protect the conscience of the people, but also to protect them from the enemy. There's both a literal duty and a spiritual duty.
And then that comes together in line 5. The two things come together.
Right, in the sake of righteousness, yeah.
Go ahead, read line 5 then. Hadarcha, so that gets repeated. Thy majesty. Why is there a repetition? Salach rachav al davar emet v'anava tzedek v'torcha na'orot mi'yaminecha. Well, that's like a you need like an hour to explain that one, right? What's going on there?
Yeah.
Thy majesty.
Salah can mean
right. What salach is being, that's already figured if you prosper. What?
We've seen before, and I think what Michael said earlier about Melech, and I think here again, Hadarecha is the sense that there is something slightly divine in that, because the words of this line echo what David has said earlier about God, God's justice, Emet v'Tzedek, and here Solomon becomes the earthly representation.
We had the expression Emet v'Tzedek.
We've had the expression emet and separately tzedek to describe the ways and the path of God.
No, I understand that. I mean, the way you just describe it, al davar emet v'anavat tzedek. So I'm wondering if there is that combination of emet v'tzedek. We'll find out. And then you have here the addition of this makes your argument v'anavad. This is this very humble king at the same time. Right, so the interjection here, that regardless of whether it appears in tandem, right. You're right to say what you said. What's striking here is the humility. And then what about the next part of the line? And and so just literally and teach you.
I don't see teach you in the Hebrew here.
What is it? And what is
Tocha? Click on it.
V'tocha might be from lehorot, to teach, maybe. Tocha can also be your turn.
I mean, the Geneva has it as teach, but
Okay, so Noraot, and these are the terrible things at thy right hand. Teach.
This is a difficult one.
This is, I mean, Noraot seems to me to give him a sense of divine authority again. These are terrible things. This is things that his people should fear.
If teaching is here, how does that function? Ed?
What, the teaching?
Yeah, I'm not just getting the metaphor fully. What is this idea of the right hand? So he says, and in your grandeur pass onward, mount on a word of truth, humility, and justice, and let your right hand shoot forth terrors. So that he's got a totally different way of learning it.
But the shoot forth terror is nice. I mean, it's got that almost Olympian sense of, that's what I meant. That the people should love and fear him. These are terrible things. It's majesty, right? So and in the psalm, he's leaving his palace and he's coming out to his people, and it's a procession. And what does
the Geneva Bible say about terrible?
It doesn't say anything. It doesn't have a footnote on it, but
it uses terrible also.
Yes, these terrible things.
Okay, next line.
Again, these are, I'd have to say, this part of the, it's a fairly generic part. We've seen before arrows striking David, and we've seen before arrows being used to strike down David's enemies. And here, instead of the arrows coming from God, which we've seen in previous Psalms, they're coming directly from Solomon. Solomon is going to strike down his enemies. So I think, I hope I'm reading that right, but I think that the duty of Solomon now at this moment as the divinely anointed king is to take on the role that previously David had assigned to God through conscience, that he actually manages to unite in this moment, being the anointed one, the responsibilities of conscience and fighting. That's how I'd read the.
Let's just yeah, it's beautiful what you're saying. Hitzachat shononim, so your arrows are sharp. Amim tachtecha are under thee. Yiplu belev.
I think that Yiplu refers to the arrows. That's the translation.
There's the right.
Yeah.
Yiplu. That's why it's confusing, because it goes back up. Is right.
Yeah. Well, belev can be in their heart, but it can also be among them, in the middle of them.
Right. Right. I mean, I definitely prefer to translate it as belev ha'oyev, in the middle of them.
Right.
But obviously, it has the dual meaning.
Yeah.
So what do you make of this doubling then? Shononim amim tachtecha. So the it's again one of those weird things where the nation is kind of falling down in the middle, right? Shononim yiplu belev oveamecha.
But as they go down, Solomon goes up, right? So. Yeah. It's part.
It's really like it's like watching an elevator go up and down here, right?
Right, exactly. This is a divine king ascending, not only over his enemies but over his people.
I think we can add another layer of meaning by saying that Lev is also the place of courage, so it might be like also metaphorical. It's not.
I'm
like
not so sure.
Your physical heart.
I'm not sure Lev is a place of. I'm not sure that would be the first meaning. I don't know. I mean, there are other meanings as well. Yeah, maybe. Next line, Ed.
Well, yeah, although his elevation is certainly demoralizing for the enemies, it does affect them in their very
Mm.
in their very soul, because they can
So
see.
maybe that's what Michael is saying, and that's
Yeah.
that is, I see what you're saying. Okay, Yala, Kisacha Elokim Olam Voed. So now we're switching from the earthly and we're moving back up slowly, right, Ed?
Yes,
Kisacha Elokim Olam Voed.
but it's then related directly back to Solomon.
I see. Mishor Shevet Malchutecha. And why is equity mentioned here, Mishor?
Well, that's from that word Mesar, I think it's pronounced. But it also means upright righteousness in the Geneva, but it also means a level place. And I always see the level place as Har Moriah. It's the highest level place in an acropolis, essentially.
And what give me a little bit more that would give you the license.
So I think equity is an extremely modern, and let's use the common terminology, problematic word now. It means a lot of things that perhaps are distracting. I think it means he's going to be a righteous king, but he's also going to command from a level place. I think it both has a physical aspect and a jurisdictional aspect.
Or maybe Shevet Mishor refers to a certain tribe that was inhabiting a leveled area.
It doesn't Shevet just isn't a tribe named after the scepter, as in the Shevet is the thing that unites the tribe.
Right, and it does seem to be parallel to Shevet Malchutecha. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But, yeah.
Also here, you notice that the translation gets the wrong way round for some reason. So it is even in their translation, it should be the scepter of equity, the scepter of thy kingdom, right? And that's an odd choice, because it's the scepter of equity that leads to his right to be the king, anointed king. And I think
right, and then Mishor is doing as what you said, really. If you thought this was a pagan king, guess again, right?
Sure, right.
Ahavta tzedek v'tisna resha al kein mishachacha el kim elokecha shemen sason michaverech. So Christians obviously go nuts with this song, right?
Right.
Yeah. So what's happening here? Why? So this is why it's like bad to read introductions where they identify who it is. I mean, you gave us a lot of information in telling us about Solomon, but sometimes just the name of it will push you off. Well,
there's no.
Right. I mean, the Radak says this whole thing is about Mashiach. I think your reading is much better.
I think that Solomon is very much. There's a sense here, though, that Solomon is Mashiach. So there's a sense that he is anointed, that he is. There is something Mashiach-like, let's say, about this moment for Solomon. So I don't think they're necessarily contradictory, although they're not.
Right, and he's actually, and locally here, he's not saying that. He seems to be talking just about what's happening literally. Kasher, hikimcha mitoch chavercha. I mean, I can't even read this. Chavercha uvechar lemelech.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is the doubling here, though, Michael?
So among your friends, among all the people he chose you, it's that sense of
and this is just
elevation.
And this is just an intensifier to make it more people?
No, it just means he chose you.
Oh, I see. Sorry. Okay, good.
I think it's also in the sense that it's in front of them as well. It's not only he wasn't only chosen from amongst them, but they are witness to the anointment. Because, as I said, this is a very physical moment. He's going to ride out as the anointed king.
Who's speaking here?
That's a really good thing. So I was going to say that you can take this back if we want to take it out of the specific, Solomonic reading. I mean, all the way through the earlier Psalms, David has said that his enemies do evil to him because he seeks righteousness, and that his enemies use the fact that he seeks righteousness as an opportunity to do him evil. But at this moment, there is no contradiction that actually the fact that Solomon loves righteousness and hates wickedness means he is anointed, and God at this moment anoints him. And therefore you have this very, very strong repetition of Elokim, Elokecha. It's not only God, but it's specifically Solomon's God at this moment, at the moment of anointment.
Beautiful. I would almost say it's like the people talking to you could imagine it as all, I mean, hypothetically, all the people turning towards Solomon and saying this to you.
Which is why I started with wanted to play that music at the coronation of George II, because to me this is a coronation scene, and the congregation are singing. They are part of the.
And this is just a continuation of the song here, right?
Yeah.
9, right?
Yeah, I mean, now he's processing out. I liked Min Echleshen because he's coming out of obviously the ivory palace or sanctuary. It's got a holy quality, right?
But also very, very physical.
But also physical, and with the Shen, the ivory. But it also reminds me of the ivory towers and the idea of the lofty descending to amongst the people.
Solomon's own Gothic cathedral, as it were.
The rector.
Right. Okay, so now we get to the feminine. Let's rock and roll here. This is, I mean, I think this obviously is crucial to understanding. So I'm awaiting your understanding. Ed?
Yes. So this is again the Banot Melechim, the many king's daughters, again suggest Solomon. I won't do this too much, and this is the verse with Ophir in it, clearly, which was in Sefer Melechim. But yes, this is now a shift to speaking to the queen, who herself has been chosen from amongst the nations. She herself is in this marriage process being anointed to her king Solomon, who is anointed by his king God.
How did we get from the plural to the singular? But not Malachim, and now then we have one queen, right?
Right. She's being chosen.
She's also
That's very similar to him being anointed from
exactly. That's what I wanted to say. Yeah, it's parallel. Yeah, he's being singled out. Very
nice. Go ahead, next 11, yeah?
Now we've got Ruth, right? So now we've got, she has been told to let her people go.
So you're speaking shorthand. So you're saying now in this verse, we see Ruth because she's also somebody who forsakes her people. Go ahead, yeah.
And and that act of forsaking her people is an act of elevation. In this case, to becoming queen rather than anything less.
So she becomes the legitimate version of Ruth.
Right, which therefore legitimizes Solomon, which therefore legitimizes David, therefore legitimizes Solomon. So all of David's anxiety about legitimacy, of Bathsheba, and everything is just immediately solved, because the queen here represents the leaving of another people to join as the queen.
And why? So in 12, this assertion of the expression of homage to the king. Why does she have to do that?
So in the earlier verse, we remember the very central verse describing the beauty of Solomon, that he'd been chosen really by God for his beauty. Now the same relationship, which is extremely central if related back to God and Solomon, the king has to desire beauty. It's an extremely central, dare I say it, sexual image. And she is subordinate to him in the same way that that Solomon is subordinate to God.
Why the expression of sexual desire then here? Why is that present?
And the sexual desire is of him to her. I mean, he desires her.
Right. Because I think she's chosen, right? In the same way that David is chosen for his beauty. She has been chosen for her beauty. So although there's a subordinate relationship of Solomon to God, Solomon is anointed. So his subordinate relationship is simultaneously an act of going up, of being elevated. and her subordination to him is simultaneously an act of going up to being queen. And so
yeah, it's
that
great.
leaves
It's great.
that-
I'm still not convinced about why the desire is here. Right. I mean, I get the parallel, but I don't see why the desire has to be a part of it.
I may be I may be completely far off here, but do you see a parallel between Solomon's desire here to David's desire of Bathsheba?
I mean, if it's there, it's in the background, right?
But you don't see it as
I do think
substantial.
it's literal. I mean, just to go back, if you have 300 wives and 800 concubines, the wife you're marrying at that present moment better be pretty desirable, right? I mean, for her own. I think there is something that is that relates to Solomon specifically as king, as there's something very, very central earthly about her duty to him, but at the same time it's very spiritual and elevated. So
right. I mean, Michael, I don't mean to push you off on this. I mean, I think you're right to register it, but I think we're still kind of just figuring out what the pshat is before we go on to that, right? Yeah. Right. So this desire, I mean, we have seen desire actually before, right? It's desires, there are good desires and bad desires. So maybe this is a version of what Michael's saying really is the king raising up the desire that we've seen before. This desire is okay. And then the yafech, I just want to see what is anybody going to explain what this means?
Oh, yafech, just your beauty.
No, what I want to know what they think it's referring to. All right, so he's also looking maybe even okay, well, so right, I'm just like wondering that description. Okay. And now what's happening in 13? What's the shift here? Is there a shift?
Yeah, I think there is. I think from 13 to the end is a description, a literal description of a ceremony that prophesies the future line of anointed kings that will come. So it's both a literal description of a ceremony.
Why would you say that?
We'll get there. But so
okay.
it turns now to she's literally standing there, and the people are coming to her with gifts, which is very
same. This is the same woman.
Yes.
Okay.
I think so.
Okay. But why is she referred to as Batso here?
That's just her foreign. Tsor is, I think it's it's shorthand for where she comes from. I can't tire.
This is okay. Okay.
So the suppliants are now coming. They're coming to her as queen now. She's now queen. The ceremony is in process, and they're all coming to her with gifts. If Solomon earlier was decked out in cassia and myrrh, now the people are the great and the good are now coming to the new queen with their wedding gifts.
Far out. I mean, the expression here is b'mincha panayich, right? It's like, first of all, the translation is completely out of order, right?
No, I think that that panayich belongs to the second part.
Okay,
like with gifts.
Panayich. Okay.
It's like with gifts they will receive your face.
Okay, this translation I can't even follow what's happening here. So let me just look at this one.
So
daughter with tribute, the people's wealth will court your favor. Okay.
Yeah, I think mincha panach is not one unit. It's like
okay, I understand. So how does it get translated then? Each part of it.
With gifts, your face will be received by the rich people.
But just to talk about gifts and ashireh. Earlier on, we saw David. It's always ani. Look, I'm now at this moment of total earthly glory. This is the sort of fields of the cloth of gold stuff. There is no sense of shame about wealth and gold and myrrh and cassia and all of these.
Although 14 kind of does change things, right, a little bit. I mean, it doesn't change it, but
it tries to qualify it, right? Because there is an anxiety about this outward glory. And
Right.
obviously, yeah, the Bat Melech Pnima.
Pnima.
I mean, in Kol Kvoda, which is, pretty outward, Bat Melech Pnima, right? So it is kind of a paradox, right?
Mhm.
So
It's
It's not.
Oh, Tikva's here. Well, how long have you been here, Tikva?
5-10 minutes.
Oh, you're this is where, yeah, okay. So, well, yeah, go ahead, Tikva.
I've been here since like a 10 or 11. Like verse wise. The kvuda is is at least according to the interpretations I read is the dowry.
Yeah, belongings, dowry, yeah.
Yeah, and this is referring to the kind of procession where the dowry would be brought in ahead of her.
But her dowry is her inner beauty, no?
It's
No,
internal.
no, it's her kvuda. It's her.
No, I understand that.
Like
I understand that, but her kvuda is her beauty, is her inner beauty, right? I'm going with yours. I'm going with your reading and reading it as a kind of metaphor for something else. Ed, what about this mishpat sot zahav levusha?
So just to give so I'll give what could be the incorrect tradition in what I've read in translation is that there is not only her physical beauty, there's her inward beauty, and she's also clothed in gold that represents both her inner beauty and her physical beauty.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. I mean, it's like a movement from the outward to the inward and back to the outward again.
Very nice. Right. I mean, there would be a tendency, I think, to erase the outward. Right. I'm just thinking about how this would be taught to, like, Beit Yaakov girls in the ultra-Orthodox system. Right. It would just be to erase the outward and to emphasize the inward. But I think you're clearly right in that.
Beit Yaakov, that was my high school.
Okay. Right.
But also this processional, he's also there processing out of the ivory. Solomon has come out of the ivory tower, the sanctuary. And there's that sense that this is a moment of life as opposed to a moment of death. This is the opposite of the whited sepulchre, the thing of beauty which holds bones and death and everything else. What comes out of the sanctuary is not only earthly glory and physical glory, but also a sense of spiritual glory. And those things are not in contradiction at this moment.
Right. I mean, it's kind of like a Rembrandt. They're implicated one in the other, right? I mean, that's what you said, Michael, is that kind of going out, in and out again. It's very, very amazing reading. Okay, so take us home, Ed, here.
So this is when I mentioned the Orostaya earlier. This is the end of the Orostaya when they turn their coats in and out, inside out, and they become the kindly ones from the Furies, and they dance and they rejoice, and that will, at that moment, as you're sitting and watching it, it will go on forever. And so something that's
who's changing their clothing here?
No, there's no clothes changing. Sorry, it's the dancing. It's the rejoicing. So there's a very specific moment. They're going to be led into the king's palace at this very specific moment of rejoicing. But from this specific moment of rejoicing, we have a prophecy that it will go on forever.
Right. 17 is amazing. 17 is like, Shakespearean comedy. Right. I mean, I see. You want to read it as the Orostaya. I was thinking of it more as we'll entertain my version in a second.
Okay.
But so here it is very much. Oh, that's what the continuity. Tashitemu. Was that the verb that was repeated a billion times in the previous one?
I don't think so.
What at the beginning of that line?
Tashimenu.
No, it was Tasimenu, yeah.
Tashimenu. Okay. Well, okay. Tashitemu l'sarim b'chol haaretz. Why do you see the eternal here? I see the spatial here, not the temporal.
Oh, because it's just leading. So it's a movement from the specific moment through 17 to 18, which becomes Leolam Ved.
But there's also, I think, a temporal dimension in 17 because it's your forefathers and your sons, their lineage.
That's why I was saying Shakespearean comedy, because there's the sense in Shakespearean comedy at the end of the plays that there will be continuity in As You Like It. Chick and I were recently talking about this line. Celia says to Rosalind, or maybe it's the other way around, why talk we of fathers when there's such a man as Orlando? Right? So we're going from fathers to sons, right? Instead of like fathers, right? Continuity, the future. And then it says also
so the great thing about, you know, comedy ending with marriage is that it is happily ever after, except Rosalind and As You Like It brilliantly tells Orlando beforehand that once we're married, I'm going to make your life an absolute misery.
right.
I'm going to be as giddy as a newfangled ape. Yeah, so she's ironizing the tradition, but there's no intended irony here. This is the moment of marriage that will last to eternal good news.
And the speaker is the same one who started at the very beginning? Oh, I see. And then so you're saying really this whole thing is this expression of joy. And when we go back to
and earthly joy
but also you said you were reading this as et so ferma here. We just and my tongue is the pen of a ready writer who just wrote about this Devar Tov, which were these Maaseh Lamelech. We just read them, the verses. We just read them.
Right, but yeah, and it's being sung, very specifically being sung. It's a are we going up?
No, I'm sorry. I was just looking to see where this leads into. Is there an expression of? I just forgot 46. Are we back into the world of despair in 46?
Michael?
Not quite. No.
Okay. So we'll find out more about that tomorrow.
So it'll be interesting if this completely, because I do really think this psalm stands out, whether it now bleeds into the psalms as we go forward, because it does seem quite standout as a psalm that we've read so far.
Right, although it's also part of this separate group of 8, which are the celebration of which are, as we've seen, planted, located, physical, right?
Right.
I mean, so we might even want to look at what we saw earlier, even though it's expressed in despair, is this emphasis on the people planted in the land. Here, this is the culmination of that. The physicality, as you're saying it, right? Seeing the king in his physical.
No, it's interesting because in 46 the physicality is kind of becomes insecure. I mean, God is like rocking mountains and creating natural disasters.
Oh, okay, so let's wait for that tomorrow. Ed, is there anything else you wanted to say about this one?
Yeah, I like the we've seen that as Kira before, is that kind of sense of David's future remembrance, his hope for the future. Now we're at that moment. It then gets projected once again through memory into the future.
Do we see just somebody Google it quickly? Does Askira itself appear? I don't remember that coming up. I'm just curious if it does. It would be interesting to look at the text.
I think I remember it, but I mean, you know, false memory and all that. Yeah, that David is really remembering forwards the promise of. But now we're at that moment of promise. It's repeated again. We're suddenly moved out of the procession into memory going forward. Le'olam ve'ed. So you start a line that is about memory as Kira, and you end it with Le'olam ve'ed, which is very, very similar to the Davidic psalms that we've been.
And it's going back and forward at the same time.
Yeah, and also as Kira is in the future tense, so it's like
Ken, I will. Ken, yeah.
I will make thy name too.
So I looked to see where else Ezkira is.
Yeah.
So there's Ezkira in Membet. So in 42. Yeah. But it's not really maybe no, it's because it's Ezkira, not.
Is it not in 42?
No, it is in 42. I'm just trying to make
42 what?
42:7. I'm just trying to make sure I've got all the different
I see.
hatayot,
Well,
so
okay.
I'm not missing one.
Right, this
There's
memory,
42,
this memory, as we
42
recall, this was an instance of being depressed.
right, so there's 42.5 and 42.7. But the hataya of azkira, as opposed to ezkira, azkira only appears once in the entire Tanakh. That's the only time.
Right, they are different. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I still think there's definitely resonances, though, I think, forward, right? Those other forms of memory were the cause of despair. And this is a memory that is not, this is I will make thy name to be remembered. It's a weird future perfect in a way. Something like that.
It's almost
Not
it's
future perfect, but just future. Yeah.
to talk about
Oh, you mean perfect in the sense that it will be continuous? Or...
No, that would be progressive. I thought the remembered made it perfect. Yeah.
it's almost like an end of history. It's like an end of history moment that evokes the future.
Okay, well,
yeah,
that was a great presentation. Thank you. And I
so
think
much.
I think I'll put this online as well, because wow, it was a great reading. I mean, because this I have to tell you, the poem was entirely opaque to me. I mean, I just want to go back to my original experience of it so we can get the extent to which we learned something, or that I learned something. I mean, I just didn't know, I didn't understand why all these seemingly superfluous praises of the outer world were being mentioned here. And Ed's reading certainly answers that. And also of the feminine. I didn't know how the feminine was functioning. And I think you provide a really good answer to that. And the ways in which this psalm really does away with the anxieties, not only about Davidic kinship, but the whole relationship to the feminine, which has been so tainted up until now. Solomon marries an Ammonite, David marries he has a child out of Bathsheba, an illegitimate child. And he himself comes from Ruth, and Ruth again is mentioned here, right? Let's just go back to that, right? So she, the foreigner, becomes a symbol, another foreigner who's coming in. It's a very inclusive psalm, right?
Divine and earthly glory at a single moment. It can't go on forever, so we'll have to get to the next song.
Okay, well, thank you, Ed. That was great. So, Michael, you're on for tomorrow?
Wait, tomorrow is Wednesday, right?
Yeah.
If
you can't do it tomorrow, whatever works for you.
No, I just thought about it for a second, and it's possible. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, excellent. Okay. And Tifa, why don't you stay here for a second? I'll talk to you more about our other work. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Ed.
Bye, guys.
Thanks so much, guys.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.